You know that quiet kind of family mornings, everyone in their place, things just working. But have you ever noticed someone looking at you like they are holding something back?
I remember the morning light hitting the kitchen table just right, warming the stack of envelopes in front of me. My college acceptance letters were spread out like proof that everything I'd worked for had actually paid off. My dad stood behind me with his usual quiet presence, and my mom lingered by the counter, watching in that careful, almost distant way she always did. It was just the three of us in our house, the same house I'd grown up in, where everything followed a routine that never really changed. I was 17, about to graduate, and for the first time, it felt like my life was finally opening up. My dad cleared his throat and told me to choose wisely. It wasn't warm, but it was close enough. That was normal for us. I told myself they were proud, even if they didn't say it out loud. But when I looked up, I caught my mom staring at me, like she wanted to say something, and then didn't. It stayed with me. She turned away quickly, reaching for her mug like nothing had happened. The moment slipped, but it didn't disappear. It just settled somewhere in the back of my mind. I tried to shake it off. That was how things worked in our house. You noticed things, but you didn't question them out loud. You stayed in your lane, kept everything smooth, predictable. That was how you earned peace. Later that day, I sat at the dining table filling out scholarship forms, the quiet hum of the house wrapping around me. My dad was in his office down the hall, the door closed as always. It wasn't unusual. He worked from home a lot, dealing with numbers, accounts, things he never really explained. Every now and then, I'd hear the faint clicking of his keyboard or the low murmur of a phone call. My mom moved through the house like she always did, efficient, quiet, leaving things exactly where they belonged. She paused beside me once, her hand resting lightly on the back of my chair. "You've done well," she said. It was simple, almost flat, but it was more than I usually got. I smiled up at her. "Thanks." For a second, I thought she might say more. Her fingers tightened slightly against the wood, like she was holding herself there. Then she let go. That night, everything felt normal again. Dinner at 6, plates cleared by 7. My dad asked about deadlines, not dreams. My mom nodded along, filling the silence where needed. It wasn't warm, but it was steady, reliable, safe. Afterward, I went to my room to look over my internship notes. The nonprofit had trusted me with basic financial logs. Nothing major, just data entry, organizing reports. It felt like a step toward the future I'd been building. I remember scrolling through the files, pausing when I noticed something odd. A timestamp. It showed activity under my login, from earlier that afternoon. I hadn't even been home. Something was wrong. I frowned, hovering over the screen, trying to make sense of it. Maybe I'd left something open. Maybe the system lagged. It didn't feel like a big deal. Just a glitch. Still, I stared at it longer than I needed to. Then, without thinking, I minimized the window and shut my laptop. Down the hall, I heard my dad's office door creak open, and for a brief second before I turned away, I saw him standing there, already looking straight at me. At first, I told myself it didn't mean anything. The next morning, everything moved like it always did. My dad read the paper at the table, flipping each page with slow precision. My mom poured coffee, setting the cup beside him without a word. I sat across from them, trying to match that same rhythm. Normal, controlled, untouched. I almost brought up the timestamp. Almost. But something in the way my dad glanced at me, brief, sharp, like he was measuring whether I'd say anything, made me stop. Instead, I kept my head down and asked about deadlines for graduation forms. He answered immediately, like he'd been waiting for something easy to respond to. That was how conversations worked with him. Stay on script and everything stayed smooth. Later, I tried to retrace my work from the nonprofit. Sitting at my desk, I logged back into the system, scanning through the activity logs more carefully this time. The same inconsistency was there. My credentials showing access points I didn't recognize, times I knew I wasn't working. A small knot formed in my chest. I mentioned it that evening, casually, while my dad stood in the doorway of his office. "It's probably nothing," he said quickly. "Systems glitch all the time. Don't dig into it too much. You'll just confuse yourself." He didn't step fully into the room, just stood there, watching. That wasn't a mistake. And that was when it stopped feeling like a mistake and started feeling like a warning. The courtroom was colder than I expected. Not just the temperature, but the way everything felt stripped down to facts, to statements that didn't leave room for hesitation. I sat at the defense table, hands folded tighter than I realized, staring straight ahead while the prosecutor laid everything out like it was already decided. Access logs, transfers, my name tied to every line. It sounded clean. Too clean. When I finally let myself look to the side, my parents were already there, seated behind the railing. My dad sat upright, composed, like this was just another formal setting he understood better than anyone. My mom sat beside him, hands clasped, eyes lowered. They didn't look at me. Not once. Then their names were called. My chest tightened as my dad stepped forward, adjusting his jacket like he'd done this 100 times before. I waited. For anything. A correction. A hesitation. Something that said this wasn't what it looked like. Nothing came. Instead, he pointed. Directly at me. "She's not ours," he said, his voice steady, cutting clean through the room. "We want nothing to do with her." A ripple moved through the courtroom, then silence crashed down over it. I turned to my mom. She didn't speak. She just nodded.
He just disowned her like that, and the mom didn't even hesitate. What kind of parents do that in a court?
And in that moment, something inside me didn't break. It shifted. Because that wasn't fear. That was intention. I should have stayed quiet. That's what everyone expected. My lawyer leaned in, voice low and urgent. "Don't react. We'll handle this." But his words felt distant, like they were meant for someone else. Someone still sitting where I had been 10 minutes ago. Because the version of me that trusted them wasn't there anymore. The judge was already making notes, the shift in the room obvious. Without parental support, without character backing, I wasn't just a defendant now. I looked like exactly what they were describing. Unstable, isolated, guilty. I exhaled slowly, forcing myself to think past the noise. The timestamps, the missing records, my dad telling me not to look too closely, the document I'd seen in the trash. My name next to the word liability. It wasn't random, it was structured. My eyes moved back to the prosecution's screen, where the access logs were displayed. Clean lines, precise entries. Too precise. I'd worked with those systems long enough to know they didn't log like that unless someone had administrative override. Someone with higher access. Someone like... My breath caught, but the thought didn't stop this time. This wasn't about me making a mistake. This was about me being placed. Carefully. Intentionally. I pushed my chair back before I could second guess it. My lawyer grabbed my arm. "What are you doing?" But I was already stepping forward, and for the first time since this started, I wasn't reacting. I was about to speak. "I need to say something." My voice cut through the room before anyone could stop me. It wasn't loud, but it didn't need to be. Every sound had already died down, every eye already on me. The judge frowned slightly. "You'll speak through your counsel." "I can prove it wasn't me," I said, steadier this time. "But I need permission to explain how." A pause. Brief, but heavy. Then the gavel tapped once. "Proceed carefully." I turned, not toward my lawyer, but toward the screen displaying the evidence. "The logs you're looking at," I said, pointing. "They're too clean. This system doesn't record like that unless someone uses an administrative override. Standard user access leaves gaps, delays, inconsistencies. These don't have any." The prosecutor shifted slightly. "And you're suggesting?" "I'm suggesting," I said, my voice tightening just enough, "that someone with higher-level credentials generated those entries and assigned them to my login." A murmur rippled through the room. I didn't look at my parents. Not yet. "There's more," I continued. "There's a backup system, offline mirror logs. They record the original access points before they're processed into the main system. I accessed it once during training. It can't be altered the same way." The judge leaned forward. "And you have access to this?" "I don't," I said, "but the nonprofit does. And if you pull those logs, you'll see the access didn't come from my terminal or my location." Silence again. But different this time, sharper. "And if you trace the administrative override," I added, finally turning, "it won't lead back to me." My eyes met my father's. "For that, you'd need someone with internal financial clearance. and direct system privileges. He didn't look composed. For the first time, he didn't look composed. It was small, almost nothing, but it was there. The judge's gavel slammed, louder now. This court will recess pending immediate verification of these claims. Everything unraveled fast after that. The mirror logs confirmed it. Access points tied to a remote system, not mine. Administrative credentials flagged under internal review. Financial trails branching outward, not into my accounts, but into layered shell accounts, accounts that traced back to them. The charges against me were suspended within days. The investigation into my parents didn't stop there. Fraud, embezzlement, obstruction. The words followed them out of the courtroom the way silence had followed me in. Weeks later, I stood on the same courthouse steps, this time alone, but not the same. No home waiting, no version of my life to return to. But the wait was different now. They had said I wasn't theirs, and in the end, that was the only part they didn't lie about.
It's strange how people you grow up trusting suddenly feels like strangers. Makes you wonder if everything was okay yesterday, what could quietly be changing today?